Afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist. Thanks for hitting that like button when coming into the live stream. We have 19 people who were waiting for this stream to start. Thank you for being here right away and hitting that like button before joining in on the stream. The algorithm will pick up this video, spread it around for more people to join in as we talk about how the manufacturers are not coming back to the United States. Now, this is something that I've been trying to explain for quite some time, and I don't care how many promises they make. Right? Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear out there. There was so many promises, so much money, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that was going to be pumped into the United States in order to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And chip making was one of those, semiconductors and everything else, like we were supposed to be this manufacturing powerhouse. At least this is kind of the idea that they were pushing out there on the mainstream media a while back as the dealings of inflation and securing a domestic supply and all that other stuff was running rampant through the media. We come to find out that manufacturing is not coming back to the United States. It's obvious, right? Look, it's like a 4-year low when it comes to manufacturing, and all the investment that goes into it didn't really actually happen. I mean, Intel was supposed to get billions, hundreds of billions, I don't even know how many they were going to get in order to, ramp up and have like the superior semiconducting manufacturing capabilities here. And when they went to go get the money, they were like, well, you have to meet these criteria. And Intel's like, yeah, we're not doing that. So they don't get the money, and therefore the investment never took place. Surprise, surprise, right? I mean, I understand that the wishful thinking and the best intentions and everything else was probably very present at the time, but the reality of the situation is economic forces are not going to allow manufacturing to come back to the United States. Like, I don't care what you do. I mean, you can tax and you can subsidize and you can tariff and you can do all kinds of stuff to try and alleviate the pain, but ultimately, our standard of living is too high to compete against the world out there who is manufacturing the same items for a hell of a lot cheaper than we will do it. And that's the bottom line to it. So there are things that we can manufacture here in the United States and be very competitive in. Oil is one of them, refining, right? I mean, we're a major oil producer, refiner. We can distribute that to the world. We can supply our own. There's plenty of oil to go around, and guess what? The price is pretty cheap. Same thing with lumber, same thing with a lot of commodities that are out there. And so when we think about what it is that the United States is going to do to try and deal with the future, the idea of bringing good, solid manufacturing jobs back to the United States is the obvious plan for most people out there, as that's what is needed in order to have a higher standard of living, or at least a decent standard of living. But the possibilities of that are not there. What is it that's going to happen? What we're going to have is an injection of money that comes into the system, and people take that money and they go and consume. We are a consuming nation. We are not a production nation. There's a huge difference inside of this. We import stuff and then sell it to each other. That's how our economy works. If we didn't import stuff, we would essentially have no standard of living, as we don't really produce the things that we buy, especially when it comes to a lot of the luxury items like TVs and phones and stuff like that. So what's going to end up happening is that we are going to have to do something in order to continue on with the system in which we have, which is an injection of new money coming in. When that new money comes in, the people who have first access to it will spend that money at face value. By the time that money trickles into the system, the people who have last access to it will suffer the most as the prices of everything moves up and their wages stay still. Now, this is something that was described hundreds of years ago inside of this essay. Right? It's called the Cantillon effect. And when people want to blame it on politics or anything like that, hey, there's a lot of blame to go around. There is room to blame. And there's actually a lot of ways that you can even look at the political events that have taken place in the past and pinpoint it and say, this was the problem right here. Most of the time, what you are looking at is a symptom of what is really taking place, which is the increase of money and the separation of the rich and the poor through inequality. And now this is going to continue because there's no other way of dealing with this system without suffering and pain and misery for most people out there, or we have ever increasing amounts of debt, money issuance, and separation between the rich and the poor. The inequality will grow. Now, it doesn't matter if that's a debt-based system or gold or anything else. If you have ever increasing amounts of new money that comes in, it will separate the rich from the poor every time. And it's because of the people who have first access to the money, the people who are closest to it. When those people get that money, they want to enjoy it, right? They don't want to take that money and say, hey, I'm not going to enjoy this new money. Like, you go out there, you work hard, you start a business, you sacrifice time and effort and energy, and you finally get to a point where you're profitable and you get this profit and you're like, man, it's about time. I've worked very hard for this. And then you take all that profit and you don't go buy anything you enjoy. Instead, you invest it back into something and you live an entirely meager life, right? This is what would have to occur in order to fix the problem, right? There is no fixing this problem because most people who get new money or get the money or profit in the money want to actually enjoy it. They want a nicer car. They want a nicer house. They want nicer food. They want nicer clothes. This is not unheard of. This is not something that you can blame anybody for. It's human nature. You work hard. You want to enjoy your hard work. Why else would you work hard? It doesn't make any sense to work hard, produce, manufacture, service, do all the things that you need to do in order to provide this world with value and then not enjoy it. Well, that's the unfortunate problems that we face within the economy, is that you do want to enjoy it. You do want to have the luxurious life. You do want to have the nice vacations and the car and all that other stuff, because that's human nature to want that. And by wanting that and even moving towards it, what will end up happening is the prices will move up, right? Foreign competition will see that. They will be like, wow, that's a high price. We can make it cheaper, right? The people who have first access to the money look at that and say, well, I don't want to spend my money on higher prices here in the United States, and these foreign production looks pretty good. Ever increasing amounts of foreign production come in, and ever increasing amounts of domestic manufacturing leave. We can blame that on politics. That's fine. Like, go ahead and blame politics. There's plenty to go around. But it's an underlying economic force that is causing this. And by understanding it from an individual who recognized it from hundreds of years ago, before there was even fiat currency running in the system. He was describing it with a hard currency gold silver mine. Actually, it was a silver mine, not a gold mine, but a silver mine. But still, it's still the idea of, like, the printing press and the gold mine were essentially the same concept. New money coming in, people who have first access to that money, and what ends up happening. When the silver mine runs out, economic collapse. Right? Same thing when the debt stops. When the Federal Reserve is no longer issuing out Federal Reserve notes, liabilities, reserves, there's going to be a collapse of the system. Right? So it's ever increasing amounts of debt issuance, currency, reserves that need to be pumped into the system, or else you have complete and utter collapse and pain and misery for everyone. This is the unfortunate situation we're in. Recognizing it for what it is will then give you the ability to then not have to put faith in the government to bring back manufacturing jobs. Like, you can look at the government and you can say, hey, you got a Cantillon effect that is happening here that is creating a situation in which the foreign production are going to be too cheap to compete against. And by dumping all this money into manufacturing, you're going to have to ever increasingly subsidize, tariff, tax, or whatever it's going to take, manipulation, to keep that manufacturing base here. Because it just simply cannot exist in this sort of environment. It just doesn't work that way. And I know I've seen a lot of people who are like arguing about it way back when we were first talking about it, and this investment and all the manufacturing that was supposed to come back to the United States. I never once believed it, right? I mean, it's promises, man. They don't deliver on their promises, right? Take a look at what they do. Their actions mean more than their words, right? When it comes to the government and dealing with, the economy and everything they do. Their promises has people wishful thinking. The Federal Reserve, on the other hand, their words are far more impactful than their actions are. Right? And it's amazing to watch how well credible threats work through the economy. How many people were actually investing and taking time and belief that this was actually going to come ramping back up here in the United States, and positioning to try and take advantage of all these hundreds of billions of dollars that was going to, come back to manufacturing here in the United States? How many people position themselves for that kind of thing? only to come to find out, man, it's sucking, right? It's failing that miserably. They were like, even the lumber industry, like even personally, those of you who don't know, I work at a lumber yard. I do retail sales for a living, and I live in the Pacific Northwest. We are living in timber country. I know mills, I know loggers, I know truck drivers, I know the whole distribution network. There's no position within lumber that I don't see. And it was amazing to see the ramping up of production taking place within lumber over the last couple of years, because it really did. It left the British Columbia area where the big time producers, you're talking Canfor, there's West Fraser, there's all kinds of them up there. They were having a hard time up in the British Columbia area. So they started setting up shop down in the southern part of the United States, and they were ramping up production to take advantage of the glut of pine trees that are down there right now. However, the demand for it has fallen away. See, there was a time that lumber mills had this huge price that they got to deal with, like $1,700 per thousand on the lumber futures, and people want to take advantage of that, and mass investment starts to pour in to that price. They were like, man, I want to take advantage of those high prices. I want to produce into this high price. They go and start up production, and then they realize, oh man, the demand just isn't there. And all this ramping up of production was really just a malinvestment due to the fact that people had misunderstandings of what it is that was in demand versus the inventory levels that truly existed out there. Inventory was low, demand was high, prices went up, and massive production came online and dumped the prices back out. Now these corporations are starting to shut down operations. Okay. And now for me, it was really easy to see, because I don't include politics into the view of it. I look at it from the economic forces that are truly underlying at the time. And when you see like the bullwhip effect taking place, when you see the Cantillon effect running rampant, when you know that there's Triffin's dilemma, which has you in a position in which that if you are not increasingly going into trade deficit, then the demand for your liabilities will then explode out there, right? Which is the dollars that the world is demanding. So as the United States is purchasing stuff, they're exporting cash out there to the rest of the world. And by exporting that cash out to the rest of the world, they're able to do world trade. And now this is a major problem for the Federal Reserve and for the United States government. As you try to ramp up domestic manufacturing, what you do is you increase the problem of the world needing dollars and you getting those dollars out there to the world. This is a major problem for the Federal Reserve and for the United States. We have positioned ourselves in such a way that bringing manufacturing back is not viable. It's not even realistic anymore. The only position that we can take is ever increasing amounts of debt issuance and the purchasing of foreign production. If we go any other way, it's going to be a painful experience that's either going to cost us taxes, tariffs, subsidies, whatever, right? Or it's going to end up costing us in the end, as none of this stuff is going to be it's all going to be malinvestments anyway. Right? So no matter what, there is no bringing manufacturing back. The only way it could really happen is for people to not enjoy the production. See, this is really how it happened here in the United States. We used to be a production powerhouse, right? The United States produced all the world's greatest stuff. We sent that stuff out there to the world sent us their money. That was during a gold standard. The United States accumulated all the gold. And when it came time to redistribute that gold back out there to the rest of the world, the United States said, no, thank you. We're not going to do that. We're going to sever ourselves from the gold standard. We're going to go on 100% fiat currency. We promise we won't print too much. And we'll just start buying the production of the world. Because we no longer are going to be the domestic manufacturing powerhouse like we once were. Producing for ourselves is no longer a reasonable thing since the foreign producers are doing it much cheaper than we are. Our standard of living is so much higher. And if we were to try and continue on a gold standard, we would relinquish all our gold out there to the rest of the world and we would be broke and miserable. So, what do? You sever the gold standard and you continue on with the increase of money, currency, right? Because it's not money anymore, now it's currency. You have the fiat debt-based, and you can have ever-expanding amount of new money coming into the system, meeting the world demand for liabilities coming from the Federal Reserve. Triffin's dilemma will not allow you to bring manufacturing back to the United States as the demand for dollars would destroy our exports. See, if you deny the world dollars, they need those dollars. And if you don't provide it for them, the demand for it goes up. And if this dollar strengthens, people, the foreigners, the foreign competition, or the foreign countries out there will not be able to buy your product because the dollar is too strong. You have to weaken the dollar in order to get your exports out there, right? To export stuff. And since most people don't really see it that way or don't even think about it that way, it's going to become very difficult for them to understand what it is that they need within their life in order to conduct themselves, because that good manufacturing job that they were hoping for is not coming back, right? It's not going to be there. The only thing you're going to have is the possibility of being on the other side of the wedge, which means that you have to be a property owner or capitalist, or you're going to end up being one of the people who are down at the bottom of the wedge trying to figure out what it is that you either need to do to sell the products to the other people or services or something else, but you got a day-to-day life that you're going to have to hustle, right, on a continuous basis, because there's no position that's coming back that says, hey, your 9-to-5 job is going to be able to provide you with a house and a family and college tuitions and retirement and all that other, all the wonderful things that a 9-to-5 job used to provide for us here in the United States. That's not possible anymore because we don't have the good manufacturing jobs that would raise our standard of living. That already occurred. Now we're at the higher standard of living with hardly any way of maintaining that without continuous debt issuance. It's a very unfortunate situation, but if you recognize it for what it is, then you don't have to go out there and blame the politics. See, what ends up happening most of the time is people will recognize the problem. They will say, hey, it's this, 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 and this, and it's all that fault over there, and they'll point at it, and they'll say, that's the reason why my life sucks. Well, guess what? You are blaming an external. Right? And you will never, ever in the history of time will you ever be able to create a world in which that it meets your expectations. It's not going to happen. Right? So what you have to do is you have to look at the world. You can recognize the problem. You can say, man, right there, that's it. Man, that's the problem. They did it, whatever. You can throw all the blame around and stuff like that. Now, what you have to do is recognize the problem for what it is, how it is that you position yourself to deal with the problem that exists, because you're not going to change it. Right? That's not going to happen. You deal with the problem with it is, and you move on from that. But people who are hoping and wishing and dreaming and waiting for there to be a better way, that ain't coming. That's not coming. There is nobody you're voting for. There is no banker system, anything out there that is going to create a situation in which that the domestic manufacturing here in the United States is going to be providing a standard of living that is anything close to what we had experienced from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even into the early 80s, really. That time is gone. And it's better to just accept it for what it is. That way you can do something about it, right? I mean, it's not like all hope is lost. This is another thing. Like, people are like, oh, doomsday scenario, no, whatever. It's not, you're not giving up. You're just understanding for what it is. You know that there is no way, no matter how much they try, they can do a lot to try and bring the manufacturing back. They could throw a lot of investments towards it. They can do a lot of things. It's not viable, right? It's going to take ever increasing amounts of effort and energy and time in order to maintain that, because it's not something that a free market flowing capitalistic, production nation would do. We're at the end of it. We can't hold on to the production anymore because our standard of living is just too much. Our workers get paid too much. They require too much. Okay? And what I'm saying is too much. It's not too much in the sense that you're an individual trying your ass off and still not making enough to get a house. That's not what I'm talking about. There's no situation that comes back that says, hey man, it's going to be okay for you. I'm not trying to scare you or anything like that. I'm just trying to talk about it for the way that it truly is. Okay? People say, man, I work hard every day. I make a decent living. I should be able to buy a house. Yeah, you should. Right? That's a reasonable thing to think. The reality is you can't, and you're not going to, right? Because that's not the reality that we have now. It's the one that you want. It's the one that you expect. It's the one that we used to have. And because things have changed so dramatically over the last couple of years and decades, it's going to be very difficult to take on the idea that says, man, I'm going to need to do more than what I have ever done in order to acquire the property. because the wedge is growing so deep. There was a time it wasn't a very big wedge, right? I mean, anybody could really become a property owner. Anybody could own a house. I mean, we were talking about it. Sears, right? This was something Sears did, mail order houses. Did you know that? You could order an entire house out of a catalog. It would show up at the property. They promised that an individual, there was all pre-cut, right? You didn't even have to cut boards. It was all pre-cut, ready to assemble. It was just a kit, right? These home kits. And they promised that somebody, even with rudimentary skills, could put one of these houses together. No carpenter, 90 days, right? 90 days, you could build your own home with rudimentary skills, and it was complete, all the way down to the doorknobs. Right? Now, this was something that I thought, what a brilliant idea back in the day, right? You can order these houses, anybody could put it together, doesn't take a whole lot of skill, right? Just a bit of knowledge, and you get your booklet, right? And you put your house together over 90 days, and they were fairly quality houses. Like, there's some of them that are around in my area. In fact, there was one, I had dinner at one a couple of years ago out in Seaside, and it was cool to look around and see all the craftsmanship of it and the quality of the actual house that was built. It was a decent house. Now, I don't know why I went off on this, but this story gets pretty interesting. If you look into the history of how Sears handled these house kits, it was super popular. They started, I think it was in like 1908, right? You could order one of these homes, and they did something, because they weren't the only ones building kit homes. Sears wasn't the only one. There was other manufacturers of these kit homes out there, but Sears did something that was really unique, right? Sears did something that the other ones weren't doing, and they offered financing, right? So these homes, these kits were like $1,700. You can get a complete kit, right, to build this home. And if you couldn't, afford the kit, they would finance it to you. Right? So tens and thousands, all kinds of people were buying houses and putting them together and making their payments and just loving it up, right? This was a beautiful way of providing homes to people. Again, like, you didn't even need to be a carpenter. You could just have some rudimentary skills, and you could pop these things together in a few months and have a place to live. And I'm thinking, man, this was awesome. Now, what ended up happening with the reality of the situation is that what happens when you give a lot of debt out there to a lot of people who are building homes? Does this sound familiar? Like, a lot of debt to a lot of people to build a lot of homes. Right? So all these people are building these homes. Everybody's loving it. It's the early part of the 1908 to going into, like, I think they ran this for like 40 years or something like that, this program. But there was a Great Depression inside of all that, remember? So here you got all these people looking to have a house, buying a kit from Sears, doing it under debt, right? Taking out a finance to do it. Now they're making payments on this house that they built, and it gets foreclosed on because of the Great Depression, right? All of a sudden they can't make their payments, and Sears is now foreclosing on tens and thousands of these homes all across the nation because they can't make the payment anymore. Like a PR nightmare, right? All of a sudden people are pissed off about this whole thing because, what are they? They're a business, right? I mean, if you don't make the payment, we got to repossess the house. So here they are repossessing all these houses that got built for free. Isn't that amazing, right? See, I think about, like, this game it's just a rinse and repeat, right? This rinse and repeat over and over again. I think about that. It was just like, wow, we need a bunch of houses here in the United States, but man, that's a lot of money to try and pay people to build houses. Shit, what if they did it themselves? Right? What if we gave them the ability to do it themselves, and we can get all that free labor out of it, and all we have to do is just provide the material. All right? This is amazing how it goes down. Like, the history of economics and money and how money flows is probably one of the most wildest, twistedest, messed up history lessons that you could ever learn, as most people don't really follow the money to learn history. right? They learn history from, history books that don't really talk about like some of the underlying economic forces that were taking place, or even the conditions in which that people were in or put themselves in, that then get repeated over and over again because the story is not told. All right, let's go check out some of these super chats, and then I'm going to have to jet out. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We got 367 people watching. Thank you so much for hitting that like button, everybody. All right, the first one, $1.99. Kamala will give us more jobs than Trump, F. Biden. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, what jobs can she possibly... I mean, what, are you going to go to work at the bar? Like, what is it that you're going to possibly do that she's going to bring any kind of decent job back to the United States that's going to provide you with any kind of standard of living that is even remotely close to what it is that you would want for an experience? I have this much faith in her. None. Absolutely none. I do not count on that stuff. Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. If you have an expectation that she is going to bring it back, I'm thinking that you're probably going to be sorely disappointed. All right? I wouldn't put any faith in any politic for any reason whatsoever. None. Right? I mean, you can take it and internalize it and, take it with a grain of salt and say, hey, if it happens, cool. If not, I'm on my own anyway. Right? No expectations from government's help. 10, Mary, thank you so much for the $10. I have been studying the law as well, and I am well aware there is no money. So how do we as a collective fix this mess? Do we just start own? Thank you, Mary. Okay, Mary, if you haven't heard me go on this little bit here, the only way that you're really going to fix the system is to do something like this. You have to understand why it is that we have moved to the position that we are in. Back in the day, back before the Industrial Revolution, we were a nation of farmers. Like 95% of the country worked for themselves and they grew food, right? That was like the majority of the United States. As the Industrial Revolution started ramping up and we started manufacturing a lot of stuff, we started manufacturing the world's greatest things. Now, if you think about this personally, like, just from your own personal stance, the Cantillon effect, it applies whether you're an individual, whether you're a business, a city, a country, it doesn't matter, right? It all kind of goes down the same way. You become industrious, right? You figure out your way. You're 18, you're figuring out a skill, you're learning, a job, you're doing, you're a country that has some agricultural products, some manufacturing products, shipping products, whatever it is that you have available to now bring in new money. So just like being 18 years old or being a new nation or a up and rising nation, you figure out a way to get new money coming in, right? So that money that comes in, I mean, think about it. You're 18 years old and you're first starting to get paychecks coming in. That's pretty cool, right? You go and experience what it is that most 18-year-olds do, right? You go out and you get a car and you get clothes and maybe you get an apartment. You're raising your standard of living because, well, you've got the money coming in, just like a nation would do. They would raise their standard of living. Well, the more you do this and the more you work hard and the more you produce and the more, you get better at your skills, the more money you make. The more money you make, the more you spend, right? And now this becomes pretty apparent, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're making pretty good wages at your job and things slow down out there. Well, what ends up happening, right? Well, this person over here, they don't get paid as much as you do, and you might get laid off. So now you're in a position in which that you had demanded too much money comparatively to what is being offered to you now. You see what happened here? So you want, like, hey, I'm good at what I do. I know what I'm doing. I'm real productive and stuff like that. But yeah, the economy slowed down. And guess what? You're kind of a luxury item because of how much you spend. This guy over here, he doesn't do it quite as good, but it's like half the pay. All right. So unfortunately, you're out. All right. And this guy is going to end up coming in. This is the same thing as foreign production. Domestic manufacturing leaves and foreign production comes in. So again, if you're just an individual trying to compete against the cheaper wages that are out there, even though you might have higher quality skills and capabilities, competing against somebody out there who's making half as much and has almost, maybe not quite as good, but fairly decent skills, now you have to compete against them. Your standard of living is too high to take any less. Like, you can't drop your pay. Like, you just can't. You've positioned yourself in such a way, your house, your car, your debts, all this other stuff doesn't allow you to take any kind of hit to your pay without, suffering the consequences from it. This is where the United States is. We have way too many debts, and there's no way that we cannot take in the money. So we can't produce and get new money out there. We have to go into debt issuance. Very much like if I was to get laid off and I want to maintain my standard of living, I would have to go into debt issuance. Same thing. So again, understanding it from that position is a whole lot easier to then understand what is it that you need to do in order to fix it. So if we had the Cantillon effect that was ripping through the nation due to the fact that we were producing the world's greatest stuff, shipping it out there to the world was sending us their money, we raised our standard of living on account of it, now foreign production finds its way in, right? Just like that dude who can do your job cheaper than you, foreign production can do it cheaper than you can too. So that foreign production starts to move in. We have the separation between the rich and the poor, domestic manufacturing is leaving, all the other crap that comes with it. So what is it that we need to do? Well, we need to work really hard. That's pretty obvious, right? Working hard, and we can work hard. You work really, really hard. Do not enjoy the hard work, right? And that's one thing. You can't enjoy it. You have to live as meager of a life as you possibly can. By only that of what is a necessity. Fix everything. Nothing new, right? Absolutely. Bare minimum as much as you can. Now, you live that life forever. Like, that's it. You're going to work as hard as you can, and you're going to live the meagerest of life. Like, lower your standard of living to the absolute bare minimum. Like, you're practically living on the street kind of bare minimum. And you're making a ton of money. Now, what you do is make sure that you have no debts. You pay off all those debts. Don't take that money and buy anything new, nothing foreign, nothing luxurious, nothing outside of a necessity. You take all that money and you reinvest it into production here within the United States. Now, you have to do that for a long time because it's not going to be competitive. You're lowering your standard of living to be competitive, and it's going to be very difficult to lower your standard of living to be competitive against the rest of the world out there. But let's say that it's possible. We lower our standard of living, we produce a lot of stuff, save all the money, no luxuries, save all the money, put that into production, okay? Reinvested it all. And again, we do this for the rest of your life and then commit our children's life to that and their children. So our grandchildren, generations, probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 generations experiencing this very thing of living the absolute most meager of lives while working incredibly hard to make sure that they take on no debts, no new luxuries, no new anything out there, and invest that all into production. Does that sound like something that's going to be like happening? I mean, in any way, shape, or form? No. Like, tell me there's a political leader out there that you're going to vote for that says, hey, guess what? You're going to work twice as hard for half the amount. Doesn't that sound great? And we're not going to provide you with anything to do this either. You're going to have to be on your own for most of it. Does that sound like a reasonable political, campaign promise that will be voted in? Probably not, right? So there is no fixing it. There's no fixing the system. What you're going to have is ever increasing amounts of debt issuance and inequality. The wedge will continue to grow. And it's going to be that way probably for the rest of our lives unless there is a total collapse of the system. And since I don't see that taking place, I would imagine by the time that we get to the end of our lives, you're going to see a major, major separation between the rich and the poor. And you'll be able to tell the difference between the property owners, capitalists, and everybody else. Because that's really what it comes down to, is the property owners and the capitalists, and they will separate themselves. Before, you could have the regular job, right? You could raise your standard of living, you could enjoy all the stuff that what would be recognized as the American dream. It's over. That's not a feasible concept that can come back. Anybody who is promising that is delusional. They have to address the situation that we are in. They have to address the Cantillon effect. Anything else is just, it's blowing hot air. It literally is. And they're going to make their attempt. They're going to try. right? Because they have to. That's, you know, I mean, it's not like they're not going to try. They are going to try. The only problem is that it's going to be futile. It's not going to work. It might slow the tide, right? But it's not going to prevent it from leaving. All right. Moving on. What time is it? Live chat. It is 11:46. Oh my gosh, I got to get going back to work. Linked on air, collapse is just the first stage of reset. Small and large ones running their own cycle frequency that sometimes overlap. So be both a property owner and a capitalist. I agree, all-nighter. It's great to see you here, brother. Yeah, absolutely. And like, start from an early age. I had an individual email me this morning. It was a really nice email. The guy says, hey man, I've been following you for 4 years. He says, I started following you right as the pandemic was kicking in, you know, and he says, I'm 17 years old and I'm really like feeling like the understanding of what it is to be on the other side of the wedge, like to how to get yourself over there. And he says, I'm nervous about that. And I'm like, bro, you got youth, man. You're 20, he's 21 now. And I was like, man, you got it. You got this. Is go and chase the excellence and take that money and start putting it towards compounding interest. You got loads of time, right? Time is by far the greatest gift for a young investor, because you have something that nobody else has, and you have the ability to compound that interest over time. The rest of us don't have time. So being 21 years old, I would love to be 21 years old again. If I was 21 years old, knowing what I know now and the amount of ability and ways of making money out there, I would have no problems. I would have no problems kicking it through life. I totally get it, man. I would not drink a single drop of alcohol. I would not smoke a single bit of weed. I would take all that money, every dime of it, and I would be putting it into compounding interest, knowing that by the time I was 50, 60 years old, I would just be rolling a very decent standard living life that I wouldn't have to stress or worry about. See, the rest of us who are at 40 years old, 50 years old, with no money, with very little options for having like that grand life like a lot of people would anticipate, we don't have time. We don't have time to work a compounding interest investment. We have to pick out the lucky one, right? Work hard to acquire the rental properties. We have to, do stuff that is far beyond the easiness of a compounding interest investment. Youth have it, man. I mean, I told that guy, dude, you're good, man. You're paying attention to this right now. Yeah, you're gonna be nervous. You're gonna be scared of the future and stuff. Nobody knows what's gonna happen. But you have faith in what it is that you are doing in every day as far as chasing excellence. And you know that you're, becoming the capitalist. You're moving towards becoming the property owner. You're positioning yourself to do that, and you're at 21 years old. Bro, you're gonna be fine, all right? You just keep sticking to it just like that. You're gonna take hits. Right? You're going to get hit at some point. There's going to be devastation. There'll be collapses or whatever. You'll get through that stuff. You got time, and that's what's awesome. Economic downturns are probably one of the greatest moments for somebody who is young and investing, right? Think about it, man. You have like hardly anything to lose. Even if you did have, even if you did screw up really bad. I mean, most people screw up all throughout their 20s into their 30s. So if you mess up just a little bit, or you mess up a couple of times, you got time. All right. Most of us who mess up, we don't figure it out until we're almost 50 years old. It's like, oh God, I messed up my whole life. Now what? All right, moving on. What time is it? Okay, I got about 5 minutes left here. Yeah, this is the Kai the Boomer told us millennials 20 years ago. Don't let this jackass sell you this bullshit. Okay, brother. All right, go find another channel. Yeah. All right, ABC, that's your own feeling, not mine. All right, someone older than wishes they were your age. What I think is really hilarious is how it is that people will literally deny that. Like, that comment right there, don't let this guy sell you this shit. You know, it's right there. That dude, whoever you are, you will lose out on your opportunity because of that. You do realize that, right? I mean, it sucks. It's sad, right? Because I look back and I think, man, what was some of the major mistakes that I had made in my life? And that was one of them, right? Is that I didn't believe that there was actually going to be any kind of system that existed by the time I got to this age. Here I'm 48 years old and it's still running. And I'm like, oh no. So my whole game plan came to an end when I made it to 50, or here I'm 48, and it's still running. And I was thinking that there was going to be a collapse and my silver was going to be making me a millionaire. All right? Worked out real well. Worked out real well. Excuse me. All right. The society teaches to spend and spend like the end of tomorrow. Well, of course, they tell you to spend because the only way you can make any money is if somebody's spending money, right? If you're not spending money, nobody's making money. And that's the problem with the United States is that if we manufacture, then we wouldn't have to stress about it. We wouldn't have to have people spending money here. We wouldn't have to have them being consumers. Because, see, we could produce stuff and sell it to somebody else out there, and then we could get the money in. And then enjoy that new money that came in. But we have to manufacture something. Instead, we produce debt. What we produce in the United States is a consumer. That's what we produce. We produce a consumer. Hey, we need to figure out a way for everybody to go out there and buy stuff, or stop buying stuff, one or the other, depending on which direction we want it to go. But we don't produce stuff, we produce consumers. I mean, what else could you possibly produce if that's all you have for your currency is debt, is a debt-based currency? Like nothing. You can't produce anything with that. All you can do is produce more debt and then buy the production of other people. Okay, Paul, the game is rigged. Tip over the board and return to living as our ancestors did for thousands of years. You, sir, are stuck in their paradigm. It's Chinese finger trap. Okay, well, good luck with that, bro. Like, good luck with it. I see and recognize it for what it is. I'm going to become the capitalist. I'm going to become the property owner, and I'm going to separate myself from the poor. Everybody else who thinks that the system is going to collapse and not participating in it will be the poor people that I'm separating myself from. I know, because I was one of those people who says, man, I'm not participating in the system. Screw that. I won't carry a cell phone. All my money is going to go right into silver. I won't carry a bank account. I'm not going to do all these things that, would then give me the ability to actually go out there and have some sort of life that is beyond that of busting my ass every single day to try and figure out how it is that I'm going to make ends meet that month. Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead and continue on with that and wish and hope and dream that there's going to be a collapse that makes your silver go up to $1 million like I did. It didn't work out very well for me. I lived a pretty miserable existence and I was heavily depressed because of it. I figure things out differently. I'm like, okay, well, I have my gold and silver. I can separate myself from the third-party claim out there. I got that part of it. I got a Bitcoin's holdings. Now let's go out there and start using this system to try and make my money, make my living. You realize how many people out there are taking advantage of this system right now? Right now, positioning themselves in such a way that they will separate themselves from the poor in a profound way, and they're starting from nothing. There's people doing it right now. And to think that you can't do it is wrong. You can do it too. And I'm not trying to sell you shit. What I'm trying to tell you is people are doing it right now. Right? Why? Hey, you may not like it. I don't like it. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Hey, I don't like the way you do this. Do it differently. It ain't gonna, I can wish and dream and hope and pray all day long that it could be different. It's not. This is it. This is what we got to deal with. And now you can say it's screwed up. Don't listen to it. Don't follow it. Don't pay attention to any of that stuff. Okay. And then don't participate and don't have houses and don't have, rental income. Don't be a capitalist. Be a slave. Be stuck. Be blaming blame politics. Blame all the rest of the world out there for what's going on. If you want to recognize it for what it is, then maybe you could position yourself to actually do something about it that is going to be worthy in your life. Yeah. But blame ain't it. Blame ain't going to do it. What time is it? Geez, guys, I got to go. ABC, upward class mobility is, in the U.S. is a fiction. It's not. It's not okay. You know what? It is for you, man. It is for you. So guess what? You, unfortunately, the unfortunate consequences for you is that you will not be able to actually propel yourself up and get on the other side of the wedge simply because you just don't believe that it's possible. So you've already defeated. You defeated yourself. Right? And so therefore the rest of us who don't believe that, who do recognize that, yeah, it's a problem, yeah, it's fiat currency, yeah, it sucks, yeah, they manipulate and create and destroy the middle class, okay, all that stuff, yeah, that's true. I mean, I used to be a conspiracy theorist that dove deep into New World Order stuff, right? Like, I totally get it. Guess what, man? I'm still here. This system is still working. I've been waiting for the crash to happen. It doesn't take place, right? Not in the sense that it's going to send my silver to the moon and then I'm going to be some super wealthy millionaire style position on account of it. I don't believe that anymore. Like, that doesn't exist. Could it be a possibility? Sure. Let's put that in the back of our head, because that's not something that is going to be a game plan. What is going to be a game plan is to recognize how it is that you access that debt and buy rental properties. That's how you do it. You borrow their money from their system, buy that asset, and collect the rent. That's how it's done. That's how it's been done for literally hundreds of years. Right? And to think that's going to change isn't going to happen. Always it comes down to the preferences of the property owners. There's only 3 people who live independently of the state: the capitalists, the property owners, and the prince, whoever the prince is. And I think somebody had told me it was people who live in generational wealth. Right? That's the prince. Those are the only people who live independently of the state. Everybody else has to work. So what are you going to do? Are you going to be the one who works, or are you going to be the capitalist or property owner? Because there's only 2 positions that you can take according to hundreds of years of history. Okay? And maybe you can vote for the right person who will just make your regular day job something worthy. I don't know. Uneducated economist, you let me know.